There was probably no one more nervous than I was before my first sales call. And the reason for that was because of my lack of confidence. So I wasn't confident in the service I was selling, I wasn't confident in the systems that I had in place. I just wasn't confident in my ability to sell something to someone face to face online. So, something I did to kind of calm my nerves down and build that confidence was come up with a bunch of questions that I was afraid of the client asking me, or questions that I just didn't have the answers to. And I came up with like 15 different questions and answers to prepare for my first sales call. But when it came time to the actual call, none of the questions that I prepared for actually got asked. Now that I've been on over 100 sales calls, I came up with a list of questions that I have gotten over the past months that can hopefully help you know kind of what to expect. So keep in mind that the service that I'm selling is social media management and content creation. So the questions that I get asked might not be the exact same questions that, everyone else gets, simply because, you might be selling a different service. So just, I guess, keep that in mind. Okay, so the first question that I get asked is actually a pretty simple question, which is, can you introduce yourself or tell me a little bit about yourself? Now, what I recommend you do is literally imagine that you are the client and you're asking this exact question to someone that you're interviewing. And then imagine the perfect response from the person that you're interviewing, and then write that down. Write it down and memorize it. Just memorize it, because normally this type of question is something that gets asked in the very beginning of the sales call. And if you're just gonna sit there and go like, yeah, sure, I can introduce myself. Yes, so I do Facebook ads, and yeah, I'm pretty good at it. I tried it myself. It worked out for a bit. I had some struggles, but over time, I overcame them. So I did this. I'm good at this. Like, you see what I mean? Setting the tone at the beginning of a call is really important. You need to show the client that you're confident in your service. You've done this before, you've been here before. The question they ask doesn't really bother you, and you can answer right away. That way you can kind of set the tone for the entire call. So another question that I get asked is, we need someone who can create content on a consistent basis, post for us, grow our pages organically, blah blah blah. Is this something that you can do for us? So it might seem a little obvious, like you're on a call with a social media manager and you're asking if they can manage your social pages. But I found that the reason why clients ask these types of obvious questions is because they want their pain points to be alleviated. And they're pretty much giving you a chance to do so. So they want to just give you all of their problems, and they want you to go, oh, don't worry, I can solve these problems for you, no problem. So, like, think of anything you've ever bought, and think, like, why'd you buy it? It's because it alleviated a pain point that you had or a problem that you had. So, like, why'd you buy food? Because you had a problem, you were hungry, and that food helped alleviate your problem. So if a client asks you this question, you should be happy, because the client is literally giving you the chance to make it clear to them that you're the person that can solve their problems. The third question that I get asked the most is, have you ever worked with a client like me before? I get this all the time. This one I would say is kind of tricky, because there's not really much you can do here if you haven't, other than just being honest. But the good thing here is, more likely than not, the client will appreciate your honesty. I had a client who had a business just setting up hockey tournaments. So throughout their entire state, he would have these hockey tournaments that he would set up for kids. So the target audience was essentially parents who had kids that were interested in hockey, or parents who wanted their kids to be interested in hockey. And then the client asked me, have you ever worked with a client like me before? Have you ever worked with a target audience like mine? And I had to say honestly, like, no, this is my first time working with someone like you. But what I also said was, I pride myself in being able to research brands thoroughly so that I can get comfortable enough to actually create unique content for your brand. So even though this is a relatively new field, it's not going to be an issue for me. And then the client said, that's great, I appreciate your honesty, sounds good. So for this one, you want to be honest. If you haven't worked with the client in this industry before, just say so. It's perfectly fine. The fourth question that I get asked the most is, can you show me some previous work examples? Okay, so when I was starting out, this was the question that I feared the most. Because if you think about it, when you're just starting out, you don't have work examples. Now, I mean, normally I have my work examples in my cover letter, But let's say a client just reached out to me directly and said, hey, I checked out your profile and loved your work and I want to hop on a call with you. So I didn't really get the chance to send him my work examples and then the client asked for it on the call. I have my work examples in like a Google Doc. So if the client were to ask me that, I'll just be like, sure, let me send you the doc in our chat. But even if I was just starting out, the great thing about the content creation niche is you can literally create the work examples or the content yourself. If you don't have work examples, create the work examples. Okay, now let's say you're doing something like Facebook ads or something where the work examples are a lot more results oriented and you have no client experience. Here's what I would do. Now you can say this is like unethical or whatever, but you got to do what you got to do and you're going to be honest about it, so I think it's fine. So what I would do is, if I was selling Facebook ads, for example, and the client says, can you send me some previous work examples or results? What I would do is literally go on Upwork and find freelancers, post a job on Upwork saying you're looking for someone who can run the best Facebook ads. Then talk with people who apply to your job, interview them, and say, listen, like I run an agency, I have clients that I'm speaking with. I can pay you the amount that you're looking for. Here's my budget, whatever. Let's agree on this. Are you okay with me taking some of your results and sharing it with my clients so that I can book them? And I promise you, like 99% of the time, the majority of the freelancers will be okay with you using their work. And then you can give it to a client, tell the client, like, my team and I have been doing this for this many years. Here's some of our work that we've done and some of the results that we've been able to generate in the past. So the last question that I get asked the most is, are you able to take on my project? How available are you? For me, the reason why I get this question a lot is because clients will check out my profile. They'll see that I have a ton of contracts in progress, and rightfully so, they'll start worrying about whether or not I'll be able to take on new projects or whether or not the projects that I have previously will have an effect on the work that I do for them. So for me, what I like to do is I take this time to make sure the client knows that, again, I have a team who helps me with the systems, the management. This is what I do full time. You don't have to worry about any of that. So yeah, that's pretty much the most frequently asked questions that I get on my typical sales calls. Again, this might vary for person to person and it might be different for you, but for me, this is what I get. There might be some more if I were to actually genuinely sit down and maybe think about it, but this was pretty much everything that I could have came up with. You'll find that a lot of the times the questions aren't really that hard. I think if you can just take a sales call and not think of it as an interview, but just think of it as a simple conversation with someone you're actually trying to help, it'll make everything a lot easier.